Hey, everybody, and welcome to Psyched with Dr. Seth, the human behavior podcast where we talk about life issues, psychological topics, so that we can gain insight into ourselves and others and hopefully have a little fun doing it. Today, the topic is an important one: apologies, saying sorry. Just such a few words, I'm sorry, and yet they often have so much meaning. We often in relationships need to hear an I'm sorry from someone that we're in a relationship with, whether it be a friend, a family member, maybe someone you're in a romantic relationship with. It matters, okay? We're going to go deeper into this topic today in the episode. But first, anybody who knows me and knows the podcast knows that I like to talk about music, and that I think that really talking about music, using it as a sort of reference, can help provide a context to how important something is in our social relationships. And if anyone tries to think about a song that is about an apology, that is about saying sorry, you can think probably of many different songs. Take your favorite singer, for example, and they probably have a song about an apology. I did some research in preparation for this episode and came up with many, many, many famous songs over the years about saying sorry. But even before doing that, I automatically had one pop into my head. I'm a fan of R&B music, and there is a great song from Anita Baker, I Apologize. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs that I've heard, and I could listen to that song over and over again. But there are so many others. More recent songs, for example, Justin Bieber has a great song about saying, I'm sorry. I think it's just called Sorry. That's a very complicated title, right? There's a really famous song, Apologize, by One Republic featuring Timbaland. That song I have probably heard hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. And you too, if you hear that one, will know that one when you hear it. An older song, Cher, If I Could Turn Back Time. Actually, when I think back to that old song, I can remember the music video, her on some sort of battleship or something in that outfit that really no one will ever forget. But that song, If I Could Turn Back Time, the whole song actually acts as an apology, going in depth for, the different ways that she felt sorry. I don't know why I said the things I said. She sang and she just kind of went on and on and on and on. I think that song is written by a really prolific songwriter, Diane Warren. Another song. Sometimes I think it's fun. Well, I always think it's fun to kind of turn anything into a game. But one of the things that I like to do with people sometimes is, take a famous singer and then everybody thinks of, let's say, 3 or 4 songs from them that you actually really like. It's so interesting when you do that, by the way, how everybody says and mentions such different songs. Goes to show you how different people's personalities are, right? Well, there's a great song by Madonna. Madonna's song is just simply called Sorry. And one of the lyrics is she talks about how I've heard it all before. And she says, please don't say you're sorry. That's a song on the perspective of actually a sorry isn't going to cut it. So she's upset with somebody. That's a song about how she's on the receiving end of being hurt by someone. And she actually doesn't feel like I'm sorry is going to cut it. So obviously, lots of songs about I'm sorry, because being hurt is such a human emotion. In fact, I guess hurting others is often such a common practice in relationships, even among people that we may really care about. This brings up the bigger question about an apology, about saying sorry, as we're about to dive deeper into the kind of psychological analysis of saying sorry. And that's, does sorry does sorry cut it? Does sorry really make things better in a relationship? If you've done or said something that hurt somebody, is sorry something that will heal? And I think as you kind of think about that yourself, you can think about any times in your own life that someone has hurt you. And you can think about times maybe when you got an I'm sorry. Did that make it better? But you know what's interesting? Each one of us can probably think about times in our lives when we were hurt pretty seriously, emotionally, and we didn't get an I'm sorry. And we know what that feels like to carry that mix of negative feelings with us into the future, having been really hurt and never having gotten the validation of an I'm sorry. So it's probably fair to say about apologies that often apologies can't take away the hurt or the pain, but at least they are an attempt. An attempt, right? What happens in relationships when we stop trying to even say, I'm sorry? What happens then? The word that comes to mind when I think about that is desolate. Desolate. Picture driving at night on long, unfamiliar roads, finally reaching the end of a road. Maybe you see like some old, sort of broken kind of fence posts. You can't go any further. You look ahead. Maybe it looks like sort of uncared for weeds and tall grass. And that's desolate. Where can you go from there in a relationship if you stop saying sorry? But you know what? For anybody who has probably been divorced, for anybody who has had a relationship end, for anybody who has had a serious rupture in any kind of relationship, friend, family, or romantic, you can probably think to yourself for a minute, you know exactly what happens when people stop saying sorry after they have hurt each other. And it leads to a place of desolation. Actually, everyone, I believe, in their true heart ends up feeling lonelier and more isolated. Bitterness perhaps starts seeping in. And who knows, maybe even the most dangerous thing of all can happen. We stop believing in love. We stop believing in love. Let's not do that. Let's not get to that point. And let's take some time now and look at this behavior of saying I'm sorry, of the importance of apologizing, so that we can be more aware of it. Maybe we can practice a genuine apology more, that we can remember when we've made a hurt to try to amend it. Because I believe in the end, relationships are worth it. Not just the relationships that we have with others, but also the relationship that we have with ourselves. And you know what? I believe we like ourselves better. We're more proud of ourselves. We feel more at peace in our own skin when we can look back at the end of the day at the behaviors that we engaged in and we can say, you know what? I really tried to do the right thing. None of us, of course, can always manage to do that, but we try. We keep trying. All right. So, next, what I want to do is I want to move into more of the personality type of a person who can't say sorry, what it means, and also hopefully we can gain a better understanding of what's really happening for them. I think a lot of times it's easy to misperceive a person who has a personality where they get so stuck being right all the time and they simply can't apologize when they're wrong. They just can't let their guard down. As a psychologist who's written for Psychology Today for 14 years, personality is one of the topics that I have most frequently written about in my career. And this is most definitely a part of a personality type. The personality who simply can't bring themselves to apologizing. All right? Please check out this segment from my YouTube channel, Dr. Seth Psychologist, on apologies. Here's the question we're going to start with and we're going to work with today. If you think about this personality type and you had to choose an animal associated with it, okay? Do you think of this personality as, let's say, a grizzly bear or a giant turtle? Okay? Here's where we're going to go with this, and I'm just going to dive right in. The personality that can't say sorry, or they can actually enunciate with their mouth the words, I'm sorry, or I apologize. They are physically capable of it. Heck, maybe even once in a rare while, they do say it. They do apologize for something. But overall, it is like pulling teeth to get this person to say, I'm sorry. It's just simply not something that they want to do, or usually in most cases, really will do. They just won't do it. That's not something that they will stoop to doing. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about this personality first, what it's like to be in the mindset of someone who really can't say sorry in their relationships, whether work relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships. They just won't or don't do it. The mindset of this personality is often when they feel triggered, challenged, when they feel like they're in a situation where they probably should say they're sorry, they know it's expected. They even kind of wish that they could bring themselves to do it, but won't. In these moments, a lot of times what they do is they develop this defensive posture. And this is sort of this place they operate from where it's them against the world. In that moment, for that personality, that's often how they feel. Like it is them against someone else. Maybe it's you if you're on the receiving end of it, or maybe it's just people in general in that moment. The personality that can't say sorry whenever something goes bad and they feel like they're expected to say sorry, they will feel like they are an island. Okay. It is like they are a human island. And what they usually do is, you guessed it, separate and separate and separate further and further away to what they say is safety. Imagine a castle on the hill with a moat around it, iron gates. Think about the posturing of that castle. It is unapproachable. And should someone make the mistake and try to approach it, well, there's no way anybody's going to be able to penetrate the gates and the moats. It's untouchable. Now, here's the thing. If anybody is operating from that mindset, does that person feel good? Does that person feel relaxed and calm and at peace? Does that person probably feel when they think about people, just the human race, when they think about relationships, friends, family, loved ones, does that make them feel warm, loving, trusting? Can they access that soft part of their heart where they feel like they collaborate with others? They want to work things out with people. They care about how people feel. They are actively working on some of the things about their own personality that they need to improve. Is that how the person feels and operates who can't say no? No. It is a place of isolation. And I would say it's a type of emotional prison that the personality who can't say no ends up operating in. It is so limited and constricted. They are shutting out so much of the light that they could feel and be with if only they were able to work it out in some of these moments with people, to soften and to say they're sorry, to remember, wait a minute, I'm telling myself that this person is my adversary, opponent, maybe on a very primitive central nervous system level, right? Where the central nervous system gets triggered into fight or flight. There are predators around. Maybe the person who can't say no actually feels like there are enemies around. You are an enemy, and you're thinking, but wait a minute, I'm not the enemy. We know each other. We have a relationship. Sometimes, if this is a personal relationship, you might even be thinking, but you love me. You love me. What are you talking about? How could you treat me like an opponent or an enemy? But this is the defensive way that this personality, the person who can't say sorry, the person who can't be wrong, this is how they operate temporarily. They are pure defense mechanisms. Everything else is out the window. They are operating on high alert, and all they are is the sum of their defenses. And what do their defenses serve to do? To keep them guarded. Keep them guarded, separate from any threats. And yes, that means separate from any relationships that require any kind of collaboration or emotional intimacy. Why? Because the personality that can't say sorry feels that emotional intimacy is scary, is threatening, is also a game that they simply can't master and be good at. Imagine me, for example, I'm not a chess player. I don't know how to play chess. I do sort of imagine that it's very, very difficult. I don't even know if I could honestly learn how to play chess, but it sounds very difficult to me. This is how a person who can't say sorry feels about a lot of times about emotional intimacy and the messiness of relationships. That when things get bad or they feel like they're up against the wall in some way, or someone's asking something of them, God forbid someone asks them to change in some way, or someone's expecting something that emotionally they feel like they can't deliver, it's not comfortable to deliver. They go into this defensive mode, they shut down and they shut themselves off. And I say the word prison, emotional prison, because they are locking themselves away from actual connection to others, from actual connection. Here's the thing. When I asked about those two different animals, if you had to have an association, what someone who can't admit that they're sorry, who can't do that, sometimes we have the tendency to think of that person as mean or bad or harsh or cruel. Okay. We may think of them as if they're that animal, that huge, daunting, overwhelming, overbearing, scary grizzly bear, perched on hind legs, growling. You can practically hear that grizzly bear. Or you can think about this personality as think about it as like a giant turtle with that huge hard shell on the outside and the tiny little head. And sometimes you know what that turtle does. It goes inside its shell. It retreats. And I mean, I'm not a turtle specialist, but I would certainly imagine that that's also where the turtle goes for a sense of safety. When it retreats, it goes into its shell. So, see, it's interesting. When we think about the personality that can't be wrong, we realize, hold on, we have a mindset about how to understand that person. Do we think of them as a grizzly bear, scary, dark, and maybe dangerous? Or do we think about them as vulnerable, someone who simply doesn't know how to protect themselves except to retreat, to go inside their shells, to move away and isolate themselves? I think that it's important when you deal with a personality like this, maybe they're in your family or even in your home, it's really important to frame them in an understanding that maybe shows a little bit more compassion and understanding. Although it's perfectly understandable if you feel like they are cutting you off and maybe that feels so callous and cruel, that's understandable, but it will serve you and the overall relationship better if you can learn to think of them as being more like a turtle who simply retreats and needs to go to a place of isolation and safety. Okay? This is really an important shift, and I encourage everyone to think more about it. And then finally, one thing that I will just mention is if you have a personality like this in your life, someone who's close to you, whether in your personal life or at work, you can say to them in the most gentle way possible, whenever we have any kind of conflict and you feel upset with me, I want you to know that you can trust me. I want you to know that I will always be here to talk it out with you. that I will refrain from cruel labels or saying mean things. I will work really hard to not raise my voice or yell even when I feel frustrated. That you matter more to me, that understanding where you're coming from and finding some type of place of agreement is more important to me, matters more to me than anything else. And I'm committed to that. You can say that to them and feel it. You can really feel it in your heart. I'm committed to, working things out with you. And when you access that part of yourself and you show that and it's genuine, the other person will soften. They will open those iron gates outside their castle. They will come outside and they will be more willing to talk. And then finally, the last thing that you can say to the other person is, hey, would you be willing to think about something and I will think about it too? Would you be willing to think about kind of going forward the next time this happens, maybe just what each one of us could do a little differently so that we end up feeling more connected and not like we're actually pushing the other person away? Would you be willing to think about that? And I'll think about that too. Okay. This sends the message, listen, some of these major personality challenges and also just relationship dynamics aren't solved in a day or a moment. The way they are improved is little by little, one conversation at a time, one open, honest conversation at a time, where each one of us is willing to give the other person the benefit of the doubt. And heck, maybe even see the other person as more of a gentle animal, if we have to associate in an animal exercise or game, as opposed to a more predatory. All right, everybody, that is the episode for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for directing time and attention to, I think, an issue that matters to each one of us. What a good purpose to spend some time for each one of us to think more about some of these issues so that we can be a better, more thoughtful friend to our friends, family member to our family members, romantic partner. And it just is, it goes on and on and on and on, the types of relationships where we may do something that hurts another person. So thank you again for joining. We will see you next time on Psyched with Dr. Seth.